if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the question dialog on the GoToMeeting, and I will either address them or pass them on to Rob to answer. So without further ado, take it away, Rob.
All right. Thank you very much, Carnegie. I hope that I heard well. I'll remind you that we are recording this session, so it will be available for a later viewing if you want to. Our earlier sessions for end users have all been recorded. Actually, Carnegie, I wanted to ask you for just a reminder: how many end user webinars have we done that were back to basics, how to where it was really just the basics on how to create a MasterMine report?
I think this is our third one.
That's thinking. It's our third one this year. So if whatever it is that you are here to learn about does not get covered, and there are a lot of, well, there are only a few basics, but of course there's a lot of different ways that you can go with MasterMine. There are the earlier end user recordings, which are available to all of everybody who's on MasterMine maintenance, which should be pretty much everybody on this call. And the other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to do a couple of different things today than I did in the earlier ones. And the first is I am going to try to leave some room here at the end for a good deal of question and answer. But I also want to allow you more opportunity for question and answer as we go along. So I've asked Carnegie to keep a close eye on the questions, as she said, both written questions that come up in the dialogue there, as well as if you raise your hand in the GoToMeeting, the GoToWebinar dialogue there, which is one of the things you can do. If you raise your hand, it should be possible for us to stop and actually open up your phone or your microphone and give you an opportunity to speak your question. So my hope here would be that while I might try to anticipate everything that you might think of doing with MasterMine and Goldmine, it's hard for me to anticipate it as well as you might actually just, whatever you're thinking of might also relate to what other people who are using MasterMine want to do. Okay, so with those remarks, let's dive right in. I don't have a slideshow for you today. I really wanted to just go straight into Goldmine and MasterMine and talk about the functionality. So what I'll be focusing on today is I will start with the creation as I typically do, although sometimes I'll approach it from the end of a share user. Today we're talking about more from the create user, but just as kind of a reminder, I'll run the launch screen here. And I started to say new. It's been
Rob.
The launch screen since version 7, and yep, I got you, Carnegie. It didn't show my screen yet.
There you go.
All right, here's the screen. And thank you for the interruption. I'm not sure I would have done it if had you not set up. Okay, so I have gone ahead, had Goldmine up here, did launch MasterMine, and of course I just went up here to the MasterMine taskbar and clicked on launch MasterMine to bring this up. In my screen, you may see a little bit more here than you do in your own. I actually have a lot of reports in my demo system here. The launching capability, of course, was added in version 7 basically to help you organize and track of the reports that you've created, but also ones that were created by others that are shared with you, or ones that you've created to share with other people. Anytime you open a MasterMine report in any folder on your own machine as well as on your network, that folder is remembered. So what you see on this side of the dialog here is it's labeled at the top, folder with MasterMine files. These are any folders where anytime recently you have opened a MasterMine report. And so, as you traverse the sort of end nodes here of the folder tree, when you select one, of course, what's listed there are all of the Excel files that are in that folder. It's only Excel files that show here. Not necessarily only MasterMine workbooks, although typically I do advise people don't mix in non-MasterMine workbooks with your MasterMine workbooks because it can certainly get confusing. And I apologize also for my frog in the throat today. I'm going to try to minimize my throat clearing, but there you go. Okay, so that's just a quick mention of the launch dialog. Let's go to actually creating a report from scratch. Now, of course, I'm not going to cover everything in this session that we normally would in a full online training with your own database, which is, of course, what you normally would get with your. Hopefully, you will have gotten with your when you originally bought MasterMine. You would have done that basic training. What I want to suggest is, if what I cover today touches on some things that are important to you, but doesn't get into them deeply enough, feel free to ask us for more information. Sometimes what I'll recommend is, well, you really should just get some deeper online training, which we can do. We connect up with you through GoToMeeting and lead you through any parts of the application you want to, including actually creating reports or manipulating data if you want to. But there's just a limited amount that I can cover in a 1-hour session here. Okay, so here's the create dialog to create a brand new report against what's in MasterMine. We're talking about basics here, so I'm going to do a report against main contact information. But note that, of course, we can do reporting with main and additional. There's a difference here, but by the way, between the radio buttons on the left, which are mutually exclusive. If you click on activities, that's going to unclick the things that are under contacts. But it still will leave you with, within activities, the ability to click on multiple items within it. So, for example, we could do pending and history both together as a report, for example, of, the questions typically always show me. So show me the activity, all the activity associated with a set of leads that we got from a trade show or that we have added to the database in the last year, and show me both the pending and the history activity. In other words, what's scheduled to happen and what has already happened with them, and give me either a summary of how many calls and appointments or detail of who was actually called and what were the results, and really you can go both directions with that. So what you choose on the left determines what is available to you on the rest of the dialog here. So I've chosen pending and history, therefore I've got pending and history activity types listed here, and I can choose, let's say, do a report of calls and appointments. And as I choose those, now had I included sales, I would get actually a different set of fields, but assuming that I don't do that, my selection of fields here is going to be the fields that are available within calls and appointments in Goldmine records on the pending and history tab. So anything that you find inside of a record of an individual call or appointment record on the pending or history tab will be listed here as a field down below, as well as all the other fields at the contact level, as well as all the other fields that are user-defined fields associated with the contact. So if you've got a large number of user-defined fields assigned that are up here at the top or down here on the Fields tab in Goldmine, all of these are contact-level fields that you can include with your together with your reports. I'm going to pause here for just a second. I don't usually pause very much in this process. I'm going to try to do that a little bit more right now because I want people to ask any questions that you've got or any lingering doubts or whatever along the way here. Give me some clues if there's anything that I'm saying that's not, fairly obvious for you to follow along with. I don't see any hands up, and I don't see any questions also in the dialogue there, so I'll continue on.
We have a hand up and a question that just popped up.
Excellent, excellent. That's what we want. So I'm going to look at the question. What should be selected for MM Updater to match? Really good question. So someone's looking ahead there, so the MM Updater is going to match on Goldmine's account number if we're talking about the contact level information, or it will match on the record ID level. Now, note that account no and PH records, which is the record ID field, both are both automatically checked on if they're available. So unless you deliberately turn them off, and if you try to turn them off, if I try to uncheck it, I'll even get a little message here. Remove this field will break the connection between your report and Goldmine. So I'm going to say no to this. That protection is in there, and basically between those two, that should always allow you to reach back to Updater later on to match up on Goldmine records. Great question, and I'm glad that came up. What's that?
And now we have a hand raised.
Okay.
believe you pronounce her name Bianca. I am going to unmute you now. Bianca, can you hear us? Or I'm sure you can hear us, but can you talk?
Bianca, you may not have your microphone working there because we're not hearing you. But if you'd like to pose your question on the written question section, you're welcome to do that as well. Sorry about that. So that was an attempt there. That was a first attempt. If you are dialed in by phone, by the way, or if you're not dialed in by phone, but you want to so that you can ask questions, you are welcome to do that. Otherwise, if you're only hearing us over your machines, over your computers, speakers, but you don't have a microphone, then our unmuting you won't help.
Another thing, when using the phone, you'll have to put in that audio code that GoToMeeting provides in order to unmute you.
Right.
A few that are grayed out, which means they haven't put in that number. But Bianca put her question here.
She did. Is this okay? Is this section allowed? Can I edit fields here in the section? I guess it would be the question. And when we say edit the fields, not quite sure which one you mean. Of course, you can include or uninclude fields. If you want to actually get to the expressions that are behind those fields, you can do that here as well. If you go to up here, the SQL query button. Now, this is assuming you're talking about editing right down to the nitty-gritty here, so that if you wanted, for example, to change the way the on-date field is pulled in, that expression is right there and can be edited before you actually create the report. The main things to bear in mind here when you make changes to the SQL query itself. And by the way, you can edit the fields up here in the select part of it. You can edit the from clause. You can actually really do a lot down here. You can also add your own where clause at the bottom if you want to more strictly limit what is included in the report. Now, you won't know whether you have the correct syntax here until you hit the create button and create your report, but this will allow you to do it. I'm going to put in one important caveat here, which is don't change the number of fields that you have in your query in this dialog. If we start out with a certain number checked on here at the beginning, leave that same number of fields. In this case, it's, I don't know how many rows that is, but it looks like 15 or so. Leave the same number of fields in the query as you start with, and what will happen is, part of what happens is when you create a report, the labels for these fields are going to get put on them from the field labels that are in Goldmine, and you're going to want them to match up one-to-one. So with that said, yes, I mean, you do have kind of a wide open editing capability here. As far as editing the individual fields' expressions, there isn't a dialog to help you just isolate that particular field. But for the most part, getting to the SQL query, if you know Transact SQL, will work for you. So, sorry, a little bit longer answer than I meant to. I'm going to go ahead and generate this report, this pending and history report here, because I want to get over into Excel. If there's any other questions regarding the create dialog, please go ahead and ask, either this time or the next time when I come back through it again. So, I've created the report. It's come up here in Excel. Now, this may look a little bit different from the way that your reports come up by default. And the reason I'm going to say it's a little bit different is you don't see a large number of fields here listed on the top left, which you probably do if you have a different preference setting than I do. We just did a webinar a few days ago on MasterMine preferences. I'm just going to kind of point in the general direction of that. We talked about these new report default selections in the webinar that we did on Tuesday. If you would like to get a recording of that webinar, it is available, so just let us know. And I think it's available through our website as well. But essentially, by setting certain defaults within your preferences, and these preferences are all accessible from the Create dialog, you can basically make it so that, for example, all the fields at the top are hidden unless they have a value setting for them. As in this case, the on-year field is set to the current year, but all the other fields that would have been in the filter area are hidden, meaning they're over here on the right-hand side in the field list, available to be dragged in again, but just not left there on the page. And some other settings that are that are useful for getting going. One of my favorite ones is also turning off subtotals for all fields, so that as you drag fields in, you don't have to also turn off the subtotaling for them if you don't want to. So those are our preference settings. I'm just going to minimize that, move it out of the way. And so this is going to be my starting point here for this report of pending and completed activities. Let's quickly make this into a report of the general type that you might want to do with pending and completed activities, namely the one that I sort of mentioned, where you would have let's say, the list of the companies, and for each company, both the most recent, or actually really just a list of the pending activity, how many, and completed activity, and maybe the date of the most recent activity, and that sort of thing. And all of this is really by way of sort of illustrating dragging and dropping fields, which is the key report organization function in MasterMine. Now, to start with, I think what I want to do is I've got pending activities in 2014 here, but I'm going to open this up just so I can see all the pending activities. And because we've got really quite a few of them in here, why don't we focus in on one particular user? I'll take Rob because why not? I am Rob. And so let's start by dragging in the information we wanted. So I think I said we would do a list of companies. So there's the company names. And by the way, I'm going to throw in contacts here just by way of kind of differentiating. You know, we're often asked, you know, Goldmine does reporting, sorry, Goldmine stores data at the contact level, not necessarily at the company level, depending on how you use your Goldmine additional contacts field. If you want to roll things up by company, a MasterMine report that simply has the company name field in here will do that for you. In effect, these are, you can't tell looking at this list, are there multiple records that have advanced product solutions in the company field? If there are multiple ones, then we could tell actually by pulling in the contact field. There aren't. There's just one user, one contact. Now, if you've got multiple records with both the username, with both the contact name and the company, then they'd all show up in one row here. But if you have multiple people, as we do, let's say under Global Corp down here, then what you would see is Global Corp rolled down by the individual users, individual contacts, sorry, but with the ability actually to roll it all back up into one. So we have a total of 54 contacts, 54 pending and history activities associated with Global Corp, even though, and I can see that even though they're across about 18 or 20 different individual account records in Goldmine. So I'm going to go back up here to the top and just talk about the activity now. So we've got history, history items and pending items. You can choose for yourself whether you want history to come first or pending or pending. And by the way, these are just two different values within one field, pending and history. If you want to rearrange them, they don't have to be alphabetical, although they are by default. It is possible to simply select one item within a field like this and drag that field to the order that you want. In this case, I've got only 2 to work with, so it's you know, one side or the other. But if I had 6 of them, you can imagine I would just drop it into the whatever place I wanted to have it. And this is true. So this is true both of items within fields in terms of setting their order, as well as setting the order of fields. Okay, so company and contact, these are 2 separate fields with lots of items within them. If I wanted to go contact first instead of company, I could drag the company field, the contact field to the left. Let me try that again. Left click on it, move it to the left. Okay. And that action is a little bit different from moving an item within a field because I can't just, if I'm moving an item within a field, I can't just left click on pending here and drag to the right. That actually selects those 2 things. What I actually need to do is get that item and then go to the edge of the cell where the mouse icon now shows the little 4 direction arrows, and from there I can drag that to its order. And that order, by the way, holds within that field. So pending and history are the 2 possible values within here. You see history first and then pending. If I change the order here, then pending comes before history, and it will just stay before history even if we, for example, move that field up to the filtering area. That just becomes an attribute of that field no matter where I put it. Okay, so pending in history, let's look at just one more aspect of those items here. Oftentimes you'll want to know what is not just how many activities were there, but for example, what are the dates of those activities? Now that's kind of an interesting subject because dates are different from character data and they're different from numbers. What's happening here is it's actually counting the number of items here, but if we were to pull, for example, the dates of those activities, well, first let's do this. I'm going to actually add them to the row area. I'm doing this deliberately. I'm putting them in the row area instead of the data area so that you can see the difference between what happens when you drop a field in the row area. Drop it in the row area, you just simply see all the items that are within that new field rolled down to the right of the previous one. So Alfonso Spellman of Automotive Systems has 3 different history items with those 3 dates, and they will show up here in date order. Now, our date is grouped here. I'll come back to the date grouping here in a moment, but our date is grouped so that the year portion of it is actually in its own field called on year, and the month portion has its own field called on month. So I just wanted to show these though as individual items here. That's going to be different if I drag and drop that same field into the data area. The data area being the bottom right of the 4 places that you can put data in your pivot table. Bottom right is data, on the bottom left is row area, upper right is column area, and you see the mouse icon changing as I do that, and then finally up here the filtering area is the 4th possible place to put it. I'm going to move it from the row area into the data area. Note what has happened. So now we have a data area with 2 fields in it. One of them is just a count of how many records there are. The other is actually a count of how many dates there are in that field. And of course they're the same because we have just as many dates as we have records. What's different though is that date can be displayed differently. It doesn't need to only be a count of the values that are in there. So if I right click and go to value field settings, this is called a value field when it's in the data area. And we can do things with those dates. It doesn't make any sense to sum dates. You can't add one date to another. I suppose you could, but it wouldn't be very meaningful here. More meaningful would be to take what is the most recent date or what is the farthest back date if you do min. In this case, I'm going to say maximum, so we got the most recent date. But that's not quite enough. What I also need to do is format this field so that it will show me that information as a date, or choose a number format for it, so that it will show it to me as a date. So that now what I see in the report here is number of completed activities and the most recent date of those 3 that are there. I bring this up in part because I did a demo yesterday with somebody who was especially interested in knowing, for a certain sales reps activities, or excuse me, for certain sales reps accounts, what is the most recent date that those people have been contacted? It's a very useful kind of information that you want to get out of Goldmine. It was a little bit tricky in their case because they wanted to know not just what was the most recent time they were contacted, but what was the most recent time they were contacted by that rep whose name is on the account. And there are actually a large number of ways of thinking about that information and making it useful. This was one sort of quick way that I came up with for displaying that. Now, in their case, we also had to do one other thing, which is have the sales rep field up here also, so that we knew we were looking only at this person's records, but also that the same person's calls to the people in those records. So we had to have both of them up here. You could accomplish this with the report of your on your own. In your case, by the way, just to sort of finish this off, you'd probably only look at history. You'd probably want to have it simplified. So I'm going to put the data area on the columns on the right here, so that you simply listed one row at a time, all the contacts and companies, and what is the date of the most recent history activity, and that's what that is right there. This also is telling us, by the way, how many history activities are there, as well as what's the date of the most recent one. So that is actually a long trip down working with the data area that I don't typically do in the basics presentation of MasterMine, but I threw it in here because, well, partly because it's current, and then partly also because it's something that it is definitely good about. And usually, what I tell first-time users or early-on users is, go with one field in your data area. It is just conceptually a lot easier to work with. Have only one field in your data area at a time. If you want to have a count of things, leave the counts in there, but leave out the dates. If you really only want the dates, then take out the counts. It just makes it that much easier to do things like use your column area to give you parallel information. If I had 2 items in the data area, then each one of these would be split into those 2 different types of data, and visually that gets a little confusing. This is a much simpler presentation. Given in this case, just to sort of interpret the report for you, this is the history of records, of all the records that have Rob M. as the sales rep. Yet each of these has been contacted by multiple people within our organization, and we're showing the date of the most recent call or appointment by each of these different users with that contact. Okay, so I'm going to sort of move away from this one. I'm going to pause here again, give you a chance to ask any questions or make any comments about it. My aim is to be considerably simpler than what I've done here, just with the data area.
There is one sitting out there, Bianca, asking if we're going to be covering concepts such as building filters and groups in Goldmine.
I will. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Let me give, I'm going to give a couple more examples of organizing the report, and then I'm going to go on to interaction with Goldmine. So first example, so this is one example, obviously, of organizing the report. I'm going to clone this. The main thing to get comfortable with is, what happens in the pivot table when you drag and drop a field someplace. And I already know from the past half hour of talking about this that I might have confused you more than I've enlightened you, and I apologize. So I talked about the 4 parts of the pivot table. Right now, I've got 3 fields in the row area of the pivot table. The row area is defined by the blue outlined part of this, and my own mouse is now jumping on me. So that right there is the row area. The data area of the pivot table is actually this part right here, highlighted in dark there. The column area has no fields in it currently, but it does display nevertheless a total for what's displayed before. And finally, what the page area or the filtering area is the part that's outlined up above there. So those are your 4 parts. So what happens when you drag a field into each one of those? I'm going to take the activity type field, which tells us whether we've got a call or an appointment, and I'm going to drag it into those 4 parts. So this is adding it to the row area, where we have multiple possible values within that for each contact. By the way, note that the color of the field, although it may be a little hard to see right here, the color of the field is different from the blue fields because the blue fields are contact level fields. The green fields are pending or history activity level fields. And that should help you visually to understand what's going to happen when you drag the field in here. Knowing that the blue fields are contact and the activity level ones, there can be multiple activities for a given contact, tells you that when you drag this in here, you're likely to wind up expanding downward the size of your pivot table. Okay, so that's adding it to the row area. Now instead I'm going to move it over to the column area, and note there are a number of visual cues here to tell me that I'm hovering over the column area right now. This is back on the row area. This is back on the column area. So when I drop it, now it does expand out to display both of the possible values that are under activity type. If there are 10 possible ones, I'd have 10 columns here. So now my column area is 3 columns wide for the 2 items within there plus the grand total. And my overall pivot table, of course, is expanded out as well. So the data area itself is also 3 columns wide and 20 deep or whatever. So that's the second possible place to drop it. Third one would be the filtering area, so I could drag it up to the top area, and there, of course, I can use it to filter what's in the report. And the fourth possibility, again, is to drop it into the data area, where it would be just another thing that gets counted or summed if it's numeric, or averaged, or presented as a percentage of the other thing, or there are really lots of possibilities in the data area. But again, I suggest for beginners, just keep it simple in the data area. I'm going to remove that one back out of there again. Okay, so that's my quick whirlwind tour of pivot tables as such. All right, let's get to the more interesting stuff, which is the actually, I'm sorry, I wanted to do one other version, which is a summary version of the same data. So I'm going to clone this one more time, do a quick summary report. In this case, I wanted to do a summary of users by number of, or by different activities. So where's my activity type? Here we go. So this is a simple summary kind of a report. In any case, whether it's a summary or listing like this, or this is one that this is the one that our maximum, our most recent dates of activity, and so on. In any case, no matter which one of these you do, you always drill down on the data area. You can always drill down and see what is underneath that item. So let me do this. Go back to the simplest one here, which is this one. Simple summary report. Okay, Nancy has 4 appointments and 12 calls in history to records that are where the sales rep is Rob M. What's underneath that 12? Double-click on the 12, and you see the detail for it. Now, here's where I want to start talking about the relationship back to Goldmine. So obviously, drill down like this is showing you Goldmine data. This will include whatever data you want to include from Goldmine. Basically any field that's in Goldmine is available to be in this list if it logically fits with the other data that's in there. If it's in one of the tables that's included in the report, and this may be in whatever order you want it to be from left to right. So that drill down action, I'm going to go back to the pivot table again. That drill down action actually creates a listing, an Excel spreadsheet that has the contents of whatever cell it was that you drilled down on. It was an individual item like this, or a grand total. Any one of these can be drilled down on. So that listing that we're creating, as I say, the columns can be in any order that you want. It can include any fields from Goldmine that you want. If you neglected to include, by the way, a field that you wanted to have in here, even if you didn't want to display it in the pivot table, but you did want to have it here when you drill down, it is always possible to go back to the pivot table, go to your MasterMine Tools bar, and add that field in. So, in here, let's say I forgot to include a field from the activity level, and what did I want? Who created the record? Who created that activity? So if I wanted to include that, I could go in here, add it again. I'll be told that in this case, I'm told that it was successfully inserted. That field actually shows up here at the bottom of the filter list, and I can then proceed to use that field, in my reports if I want to, or I can drill down again, and that field is in here. Now, you probably didn't see it in the dialog there, but I actually can select what order that field shows up amongst the other ones in here, and you have a good deal of control on the MasterMine drill down toolbar, which I'll go into a number of these tools right now. You actually do have the ability to adjust what order these fields are in. Right here, you can actually go to sort columns and say, well, I want the user ID to be up there. Maybe I don't want it that far down. I'll put it down here. And maybe that create by field that I just added, I want it farther down, whatever. When I move it in the order here, you also notice what it does is it moves on the sheet itself. And after I've got it the order that I want it to be in, if I come down here and say apply, so done will just simply close this dialog. Apply will actually apply that field order to the pivot table, to the query that's on the pivot table itself, so that the next time I drill down, I'll still have these in the same order: contact, company, user ID, and so on. I'll just sort of illustrate that. Come back here, drill down again, and you see that the order is maintained in the new order that I've created here. So you can control what order these are in. You can control what fields show up, And basically, these line listing reports, these are what I would call instant reports. They're instant listings of whatever it is that you wanted to create. If the sales manager wants, give me a list of everybody that they've called in the last 3 months that they left a message but never got through to them or whatever, or they actually got through to them, this would be the pivot table that's on the front would be the quick, easy way to get to that, and then the drill down would be what you'd actually deliver to them to look at. Now, interactions back with Goldmine. Quick and easy ones would be simply drilling through to the Goldmine record. So double-click anywhere on the row, and as long as we have an account number in the query, we should be able to just double-click and have that pop the Goldmine record right up. As a report creator, that's maybe not as valuable to you as making it available to the other side. Goldmine grouping. So I'll actually make a group of Goldmine records, and again, let's go back here to the definition of what we're looking at here. Let's suppose we want to make a group of the Goldmine records that are represented by these 12 calls. Now, in this case, as I just saw on the list, now this is records that Nancy has called that are under sales rep name, just to be oriented in it. It doesn't really matter what the criteria are for getting there. It's just that we understand what it is we're looking at. So when I drill down, these are the 12 completed calls. Each row represents a call. And if I want to build a Goldmine group of the companies that were called, I'm not going to have 12 members of the group. I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members of the group actually, because you can get in a group more than once in Goldmine. So, but it's simple. MasterMine drill down tab again, or menu again, Goldmine group button, choose the name for your group. Nancy called these. And now you can make the group be under your own name or under some other user's name. If you want that other user to do something with this information, put it under their name so that in Goldmine they'd be able to take that group. Some of you in the call probably are well familiar with groups. Others maybe never use Goldmine groups at all. But so the result is you can see that it's colored them by the light blue ones would have been duplicates, so they don't actually get added to the group. The darker ones did get added to the group. The summary report at the end said we have 7 members of that group. So now over here in Goldmine, from here you basically take that group and do whatever action you're going to do them. Schedule calls for that group. Send an email to that group, whatever it's going to be. I won't go into how Goldmine works with groups too much, but if somebody has questions about that, I'm happy to answer it. Editing activities as well. So I demonstrated double-clicking to pull up a Goldmine record. Double-clicking actually accomplishes the same thing as hitting this button up here. It says Pop Record. That would pull up the Goldmine record. If you're looking at a pending or a history activity, the Edit Activity button will actually pull up the activity itself on the Goldmine side so that you can easily adjust information in there. If you're looking at a forecast sale report and you want to be able to pop open those forecast sale items and change the dollar value or change the date that you think the sale is going to close, this becomes a very efficient way to manage your sales forecast. Let's see. So I'm going to talk about Updater here in a moment, but I want to pause here again for a moment and see what else we've got here on the question board. Carnegie, has anything come up, or has things been sort of answered and dealt with?
I have one that sent me a chat asking if we're going to cover exporting contacts from an active group.
Exporting contacts by using an active group? Are we talking about don't quite understand the question.
See if we could get some clarification. Bianca,
okay.
Are you looking to export out of Goldmine or show you how MasterMine can export your contacts? If you wouldn't mind to chat me back the clarification.
And while she does that, you guys go ahead and handle that on the side there. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Updater.
Okay.
So updating Goldmine data. So this is the last section here in the interacting back with Goldmine part. And I won't go through this in great detail because it should be fairly obvious. If you've got Updater, what this allows you to do is actually update the data in place on the Goldmine side. So for example, if I wanted to go in and change data, and by the way, it may not be data, it may be data that you don't actually have access to in the Goldmine user interface, like the, who created this. You would not be able to go into Goldmine and actually change the name on the create by field. You may not want to in most cases unless you're fixing something that was wrong in the database from the start. But if you want to update data on the Goldmine side, whether it's user accessible or not, you could go in here and let's say change this to Nancy. Change it here on the spreadsheet, and then again on the MasterMine tool drill down ribbon here, choose MM Updater, and now this is a fairly straightforward dialog if what you're doing is simply updating things in place. There are other tabs here, by the way, that you may not see in your own Updater yet. This is coming up in a newer release of version 8. There are some other tabs actually right now in the version 8 beta. But what we're adding in here is the ability to manage email addresses much more effectively and more precisely, manage websites, manage your actual Goldmine mailbox, not just your mailbox, but everybody's mailbox, which is a kind of a big administrative task if you're working with Goldmine. You may have noticed that over time a lot of stuff builds up in inboxes, and that can bog down your system. This is a good way to manage that data that's in there. What else do we have? Linked documents is another section in Goldmine that you can manage with this. Now, what I'm going to do here, though, is just the simplest, which is simply updating a field in place, a regular, a regular record field there, and we're going to be, so what we're changing here is the create by field in the cal table. Now, this dialog isn't necessarily going to know what field you want to update on the other side, so you need to specify, okay, we're dealing with, actually this isn't the cal table, it's the history table, because we know we're only looking at history. And it's going to look up by, it's going to sort of assume that if you're updating history that it's using that record ID field that was included when we created this. Not column P here, but probably column Q. And the field that we're going to be updating on the other side here is the created by user. And this dialog has a little bit longer explanations of what each of the fields is that you are updating here, so that you can logically figure out, well, I may have a simple label on the MasterMine side, but this greater explanation helps you to understand what it is that you're updating. And that's it. We can do, I can do this as a test run. I actually will do that. So I'd like to do a test run in advance so that I can look at the log sheet, see what was there and what the old value was and what the new value is. Now in this case, I'm not seeing that other name in here, so I'm a little bit wary of what's going to happen with that one. And I don't really know what I did wrong. But one thing that you can do is watch, see what your original values and your new values are, and if that, oh, I do know what's going on here. I'm actually working with our pre-beta. This is our alpha version of this software, and we put it on the demo system here, and it's letting me down. So in your case, when you do that, you will actually see the value, the starting value for it, and you would be able to go ahead then. Once you've verified that that's the change you want to do, you could go to the log sheet and you could say, let's finalize that data, and it would actually update those records. I have some confidence that that's going to do that accurately. If I go to the activity itself, actually you can't see that activity. This is a 5:30 callback, so what I'd have to do actually is go to this one and hit zoom. Okay, Oh, you can't zoom in. Oh, okay, they don't do zoom anymore because you can see it over here. So who created it? It now says Nancy. Used to say Rob. Um, so that's just kind of wanted to close the loop there. So yes, we did successfully change that to Nancy. If I want to put this back to Rob, I'm actually going to have to, you know what, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to leave it how it is. But it is possible to actually change the original value or put the original value back in there and then do undo, and it would pop that back into those records. So those are all the interactions back with Goldmine again. Let's see. To tell you the truth, that's about all I wanted to cover in this part for organizing the reports and doing the interaction back with Goldmine. We're about at the end of our hour, or very close to it. I apologize if we came off a little bit scattered today. This wasn't my favorite way of doing this, but we are experimenting a little bit with trying to get some better interaction going with you on the end user webinars. As I said before, if you would like to learn more about MasterMine, if you want to learn about it at a deeper level, the best way really to learn about it is to do training online where we're working with your data, and we are, so everything is in context basically for you and how you use Goldmine. It's a little bit hard to imagine really learning this well when you are when you're looking at somebody else's data or a demo database as opposed to the one that you work with in a practical way. Getting some very nice comments here from the attendees, so thank you very much. Let's see, any other questions or comments?
Are you hearing
Go ahead.
me?
Yep,
Okay,
I hear you.
good. Just making sure I'm unmuted. Okay. Ray is asking, where to go? Is there a way to limit MasterMine users' permissions so some users can't just change the data? So the security settings.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a log showing the change history?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing, of course, is if they don't have Updater, they can't change the data. So if you don't license them for it, they can't do it. Being licensed for MasterMine does not make Updater available to them. You have to pay extra for that. So that's kind of I would say that's the key thing. Another thing is MasterMine does the work on Goldmine data through the API, which is a technical way of explaining that if a user can't, let's say, drill through, if they were not able to manually load up, let's say, Kenneth Spaulding's record in Goldmine because that was curtained from them, they might see it in a MasterMine report, but they would not be able to drill down to it, and they would not be able to update it using Updater. So that's kind of a second layer of, if you've got the security built into Goldmine, then that security holds here in large part for MasterMine, although in reporting-wise, the information would still be available in the reports if you wanted to make it available to them. Do you think that answered the question? I think so. Is there a log showing the change history? Sorry, I just saw the second part of the question. So is there a log? Well, doing Updater will not generate history log records on the Goldmine side. However, there is this log that is created and that typically is in the hands of the person who does the updating. And this will continue to exist. I mean, if you save this workbook with the log sheets in it, then you do have your before and afters, and usually this will show you what the before value was, and you can tell what company and contact was updated here, and so that's in a sense that is a log, but it's obviously not the same thing as history log in Goldmine.
I think that answered the question. And another one on a lot of people's mind is, when will the new release come out?
Well, that's a good question. The new release actually, we've been promising it for a number of months, and what has happened is we've had a bit of creep as we sort of started to add new things like these capabilities in Updater. You can actually get the most current release now in beta, by request. Just give us a call, contact Carnegie if you want it. You will need a new version 8 license to go with it, so make sure that your annual maintenance is current so that you can get that new license. But you can start working with it. The functionality that I was just showing you regarding managing email addresses, there's actually a version of that in there. It's just not quite as fully articulated as the new one that I'm showing you here. But for the most part, what will be released in, I'm going to say mid-September is what I'm shooting for right now. What should be released at that point is pretty much the same functionality that we have right now. We're just trying to test it and find bugs and clear things out as we go along here.
And I'm going to ask a personal question. So if they install the beta and get the new license numbers as the new releases come out and when the official release happens, will it do the automatic updates?
It will do automatic updates, yes. So one of the new features in version 8, and you will all probably, if you're in the IT department, you'll be very glad to hear this. One of the features of version 8 is web update, meaning it will actually, when you launch MasterMine, it will go out and check to see whether there's a newer version, and if there is, allow you to go ahead and install it, to download and install it without having to do any extra work. It'll pull down the current version, turn off the one that you're running, reinstall, and then you'll launch it again, and the next time you launch it, you'll have the most current build of MasterMine. So that didn't seem like such a personal question, Carnegie. I thought you were going to ask how tall I am or something.
No, it was my own question, not somebody out in the audience. That's what I was meaning.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it. I'm just trying to, somebody posted, I'm trying to see a comment or a question.
Okay. And by the way, you are welcome, by the way, to put in both questions and comments. Any feedback that we get on our end user sessions especially is very valuable to us. Helps us to figure out what to present the following month and what format works best for you and so on. So please feel free to either email us or put things right there in the question box. We are actually at 2 o'clock here, so if there are not further questions, I will bring this one to a close. And thank you all very much for taking the time to visit with us today. I hope that this was helpful for you. To the extent that it's not, I'll throw it back to you and ask you to please advise us on how to make it more so. All right, thank you all very much. Thanks for using MasterMine. We'll look forward to talking with you again in about a month.